I showed her a photograph. She cried, "That's my mom." She was already crying before I understood what was happening. 1 second she was standing beside me, studying the table of human artifacts I had arranged for the exchange session, and the next second she made a sound I had never heard from a living creature before. It was like someone had pressed their hand against a cathedral pipe organ and held the note until the glass cracked. Every Velnari head in that hall turned at once. Our diplomatic escorts reached for their earpieces. Captain Doyle stepped through the side door with his hand resting near his radio. I still had the photograph in my hand. I had not even meant to show it to her. Sierra Ann had been working her way down the display table, touching things gently with one crystalline fingertip, asking me questions in that careful, wind chime voice of hers. She picked up a compass. She held a paper letter against the light. She pressed one finger to the glass face of a wristwatch and asked why humans would strap a counting machine to their own bodies. I was explaining the concept of personal timekeeping when I reached into my breast pocket out of habit, the way I always do, the way I have done for 15 years without thinking about it. I pulled out the photograph of Nora Vance. It was not part of the display. It was just mine. A printed image on real paper, slightly worn at the corners, protected inside a thin plastic sleeve. Nora was standing on a dark rocky shore somewhere on Velnar Prime, wearing her survey coat, laughing at something off to the left of the frame. The wind was pulling her hair sideways. She looked like the happiest person who had ever lived. I was about to put it back when Sierra Ann went completely still. Her 3 eyes locked onto the photograph. The amber rings around her irises dilated until I could barely see the color anymore. And then she made that sound. And the world fell apart. I said her name. I said it again. I crouched down because her knees had buckled and I was afraid she was going to fall. 2 Velnari attendants reached her before I did, catching her by the arms. She was shaking. Her crystalline skin had gone from its usual pale blue to something closer to white, which I later learned was what Velnari skin does when they are in shock. She pointed at the photograph in my hand. Her voice, when she finally got words out, was barely recognizable through the translator. The device on my collar processed it and gave me the closest human equivalent it could find. She said, "That is my origin cell. That is my mother." I looked down at the photograph. I looked back at her. Nora Vance had died 15 years ago on a solo survey mission to Velnar Prime. She was 31 years old. She had no children. She was human. Captain Doyle cleared the room in under 2 minutes. He was good at things like that. Within 4 minutes I was sitting across a low table from Sierra Ann, with a Velnari medical attendant nearby, and our ship's senior translator, a quiet woman named Claire Booth, sitting beside me with her tablet open. Claire was the best in the fleet. She had spent 9 years learning the Velnari dialect variations. If anyone could find the error in what the collar translator had given me, it was her. There was no error. Claire worked through it 3 times, asking Sierra Ann careful questions, mapping the emotional register of the words against the structural meaning. The Velnari word Sierra Ann had used was not the clinical term for an origin cell. It was the devotional form. The word you used when you spoke of sacrifice. The word you used in the lineage ceremonies when an entire generation knelt and named the one who had given up everything so they could exist. "She is using the word correctly," Claire said quietly. "She is not confused about its meaning." I asked Sierra Ann to describe what she remembered. She had no direct memory of her origin event. No Velnari did. They fragmented from a host before they were capable of memory, emerging later as formed individuals. But she knew the story. Every member of her generation from the Keth Salon settlement knew the story, because the elders had made sure of it. It was the most important story in their history. 15 years ago, a sickness had swept through the Keth Salon settlement in the southern valley of Velnar Prime. It moved fast and it moved hard. Within 3 months, every adult in the settlement was dead or dying. Without adults to perform the Velsun, the seeding ceremony, no new generation would form. When the last adult died, the settlement's lineage would simply end. One elder survived long enough to understand what was about to happen. Her name was Vos Keth. She was 300 years old and she was dying, and she knew it. And she spent her last coherent days teaching the sacred ceremony to the only living creature in the settlement who was still healthy enough to perform it. That creature was not Velnari. Sierra Ann described her to me the way the elders had always described her. Bipedal, soft-skinned, with hair the color of deep soil, and eyes the color of ocean water on a cloudy day. A creature who had arrived in the valley months before the sickness, who had stayed when everyone else who could leave had left, who had learned to speak passable Velnari in a period of time that Elder Vosketh later called, in her final recorded words, "So fast it frightened me." A creature who performed the Velsun the night Elder Vosketh died. She did it imperfectly, Siraine said. Her voice was steadier now, though her skin had not fully returned to its normal color. The elders who analyzed it later said her body had none of the biology required, no cellular division capability, no Velnari chemistry at all. By every law of biology they could apply, what she did should not have worked. She looked at the photograph on the table between us. But it worked, she said, and my generation exists because of it. 43 of us, and our children, and their children after that. The room was very quiet. I had known Nora Vance for 6 years before she disappeared. We had done 3 survey missions together, shared 4 different temporary research postings, argued passionately about methodology and alien dietary habits and the correct way to document a first contact situation, and eaten more bad food in more bad cafeterias than I could count. She had been my mentor first and my closest friend second, and the loss of her had been the kind of loss that does not close over. It sits in you. You carry it. I had carried the photograph for 15 years because I could not make myself stop. I pulled up her mission logs on my tablet. The official record was thin, which had always bothered me. The logs from the first 5 months were intact. Standard survey documentation, detailed and precise. Exactly what you would expect from Nora. In the 5th month, the entries started getting shorter. In the 6th month, they almost stopped. The last official entry was a brief note about a spreading illness in the nearest settlement and her decision to remain and assist. After that, nothing. The official report listed equipment failure as the cause of communication loss. The report listed environmental hazard as the probable cause of death. No body recovered. No further details available. I had never believed the thinness of that file. I had complained about it to 3 different department heads over the years and gotten sympathetic responses and no answers. Now Claire was sitting next to me running a sub-frequency archive search on her own tablet, and she found something within 6 minutes that the official record had somehow neglected to include. A backup audio log. Compressed, corrupted at the edges, but recoverable. Claire put it through the restoration software. We listened to it together. Nora's voice came out of the speaker tired and rough, the way it got when she had been pushing herself too hard for too long. She said, "Log entry, personal backup channel. I am not sure of the exact date. The settlement is down to 2 adults and neither of them will last the week. I have been working with Elder Vosketh for 11 days now. She is extraordinary. She is teaching me the Velsoon. I have read everything in the public xenobiology archive about Velnari reproductive biology, and I know what the science says. I know a human body should not be able to do this, but Vosketh says intention matters in this ceremony as much as biology. She says she has never seen a non-Velnari learn the ritual words this well. I do not know if she is telling me the truth or telling me what I need to hear to keep trying. Either way, I am going to keep trying." A pause, the sound of wind somewhere in the background. "There are children here who will not exist if I do not do this. I cannot leave. I want to be clear about that for the record. I am not staying because I have no choice. I am staying because I have a choice, and this is the one I am making. If this does not work, someone should know that I tried. If this does work, someone should know that Vosketh is the one who made it possible. She is the bravest person I have ever met, and she is spending her last days making sure I do not fail these children. She deserves to be remembered." Another pause, shorter this time. End log. Claire stopped the recording. I sat with that for a moment. Captain Doyle, who had been standing near the door, walked over quietly and put his hand on my shoulder for a second, and then walked away again, which was the most emotion I had ever seen him express in 3 years of service together. Siraine had been watching my face during the recording. She understood some human emotional expression by now, from her exchange training, and she read enough of what was happening to sit quietly and give me the time I needed. When I looked up, she said, "You knew her." "She was my friend," I said. "She was one of the best people I have ever met." Siraine's skin shifted through a color I did not have a reference for. Claire told me later it was the Velnari expression for grief and gratitude at the same time. 2 things folding into each other so completely that the language stopped being able to separate them. I showed Siraine the rest of the photographs on my tablet. Nora at her university posting, young and serious and already arguing with someone off to the side of the frame. Nora on her first deep space survey, standing at a viewport with her face pressed close to the glass like a child. Nora at a terrible research outpost on a cold moon somewhere, wrapped in 4 layers of gear, holding a cup of something hot with both hands and grinning like she had won a prize. Nora laughing at one of my jokes, which she always said were not as funny as I thought they were but laughed at anyway. Siraine touched each image on the screen with one careful fingertip. She did not rush. She looked at every one. When she finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "We have a word for her. Our generation has always had it. The elders gave it to us before we were old enough to ask why. Velkovac. It means the impossible seeding. We use it when something should not have been able to happen, but happened anyway, because something refused to stop trying. She paused. We did not know she had a name. Something about that sentence reached in and took hold of something in my chest and did not let go. I told Sira Ain about photographs then, because she had been curious about the one in my hand since the beginning of this, and she deserved to understand what she had been looking at. I explained that humans had invented a way to press a moment of light into a permanent surface, to hold the image of a person in place so that the people who loved them could keep looking at their face. I told her that I had been carrying this specific photograph in my pocket every single day for 15 years, because I could not find another way to hold on to someone I was not ready to let go of. Sira Ain looked at the photograph for a long time after I said that. Then she said something that I have thought about every day since, and will probably think about for the rest of my life. She said, "Your kind preserves the people you love in light, so they cannot disappear. Our kind carries the people who gave us life forward into the future, so they cannot be erased. She gave us the gift of existing. You gave her the gift of being remembered. Between your two kinds, she has never died at all." I did not manage a response to that. I tried, and I could not do it. What happened next moved fast, the way historic things sometimes do once they start moving. The Velnari Elder Council was contacted by Sira Ain's attendants within the hour. The response from Velnar Prime came back in under 40 minutes, which was record time for a council that was famously deliberate in its communication. Captain Doyle had to take the call in the command center, and he came back looking like someone had handed him something fragile and very heavy. The council was requesting that Nora Vance be entered into the Velnari lineage register. Our diplomatic team took nearly 10 minutes to process that. The lineage register was the oldest continuously maintained document in Velnari civilization. It contained the name of every origin cell of every living generation going back further than humanity had written records of any kind. No non-Velnari had ever been entered into it. There was not even a protocol for such a thing, because no one had ever conceived of a situation that would require one. They were going to write her name in it anyway. Commander Halloway, our chief diplomatic officer, said it was the most significant cross-species recognition event in the history of the fleet. She said it would change the entire framework of human and Velnari relations. She started talking about the implications for future diplomacy and treaty structures, and I listened to about 2 minutes of it before I stopped hearing the words. I was looking at the photograph. I was thinking about a rocky shore on Velnar Prime, and a woman in a survey coat laughing at something I would never get to know about, and a dark valley where a 300-year-old elder had spent her last days teaching an impossible ceremony to a human who refused to leave, and 43 children who came into existence because someone looked at an impossible choice and decided that the word impossible was not the relevant factor. Sira Ain found me on the observation deck later that evening. She had asked a crew member where I had gone and followed me there, which was something I had not expected from her. She stood beside me at the viewport and looked out at the stars for a while without speaking. She was good at silence. Most Velnari were, in my experience. Then she asked if she could have a copy of the photograph. I thought about that for a moment. Then I went to the crew printing station down the corridor and I had it printed on real paper, the same way mine had been printed, because Nora had always said that if you were going to give someone something, you should give it in a form that cost you something. A digital copy cost nothing. A printed photograph on paper was a thing you could hold, a thing that could wear at the edges, a thing that lasted. I presented it to Sira Ain with both hands, because that was the Velnari formal way of giving a gift, and because it felt right. She took it the same way, with both hands. Her skin went a soft, warm amber, that Claire later told me was the closest thing Velnari physiology had to what we would call being moved to the point of speechlessness. She looked at Nora's face in the photograph for a long time, Nora laughing on that dark shore. Nora who had gone further out into the universe than the rest of us and left something extraordinary behind. I wrote in my journal that night, the way Nora had taught me to, because she had always said that the things that happened to you deserved to be written down so they could not be lost. I wrote, "She always told me the universe was too large to be lonely in. I spent 15 years thinking she was wrong. I think I was the one who was wrong. She did not disappear out there. She went further ahead than the rest of us, and she left behind children who carry her in their biology, and a name being written into a document older than our civilization, and a word, Velkovac, that an entire species says when they want to describe something that should not have been possible but happened anyway, because someone refused to walk away." I put my pen down. I looked at the empty space in my breast pocket where the photograph used to be. I thought about Nora laughing on that shore, and Sierra N holding the image of her with both hands, and 43 people alive in the universe because one woman had decided that impossible was not a good enough reason to stop trying. Then I picked up the pen again and wrote one more line. That sounds exactly like her.